We have some breaking news. A federal judge just ruled that both President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth violated the law by using the military in the Los Angeles area over the summer. The Trump administration deployed thousands of federalized California National Guard members and Marines during an immigration crackdown in June. And this decision comes as the president weighs, as we were just talking about, whether to send National Guard members to other cities, as he has done in Washington, D.C. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor and Politico magazine senior writer Ankush Khardori. Ankush, thank you for coming here. So what is the judge's reasoning here?
Well, the judge's reasoning is fairly straightforward. He says that the Posse Comitatus Act prevents the deployment of the military on U.S. soil for normal law enforcement operations. And he held, after conducting a trial on this matter, that the National Guard was deployed in California for normal law enforcement operations, arrests, searches, stops, helping execute search warrants and things like that. And he said that this is illegal. And one thing I would point out that may get lost in the shuffle as we cover this is not really going to be relevant given the president runs the Justice Department effectively, but violations of the Posse Comitatus Act are a crime under ordinary circumstances, a low-level crime, but a crime nonetheless.
So what would the consequences be potentially for the president or defense secretary, also given the fact that this is after the National Guard had been deployed there and then left?
Yeah, so as to the criminal side, I mean, again, I don't expect the Justice Department to do anything about this since it's now the Trump Justice Department. With respect to the civil, on the civil side, though, you're right that most of the National Guard members are gone, but the judge said that there's still some remaining here. So even if it's in the low hundreds, his order requires them essentially to leave or to stop engaging in the conduct that was at issue here.
So then how do you expect this legal decision to impact President Trump's plans to possibly deploy National Guard troops to other cities like Chicago or New York, especially after he has done so here in D.C.? And what does it mean for the National Guard troops here in D.C. right now?
This is the National Guard in D.C. operates under a different legal framework. So this doesn't really tell us much about the legality of the National Guard deployment in D.C. With respect to L.A. and California, I would expect DOJ to appeal. We'll see. As for the effect of this decision on the administration's decision to deploy the National Guard in other states, look, under ordinary circumstances, under prior administrations, you would expect the White House to take this extremely seriously and for it to deter them from those sorts of deployments. We do not know, given the way that this administration has conducted itself, whether it will actually take that position, because as we learned during the Supreme Court litigation over the injunctions, the universal injunctions, you may recall, the Justice Department's position was effectively, we can kind of do whatever we want, whatever jurisdiction, unless and until we get a circuit court ruling or an appeals court ruling. So they may decide to plow ahead. Last thing I'll just say here is that even if they, I think, were to decide to do so, I think one of the reasons we've seen them pull back a bit is because polling showed that these deployments of the National Guard were quite unpopular, both in California and even more recently in D.C. on a national level. Not as lopsided as the California deployment, but unpopular nonetheless.
And does this also show you how difficult it is to really challenge once the president deploys the National Guard in cities, right? I mean, that's been a big topic of discussion. What are city officials like in Chicago and elsewhere? How are they going to do this if the president plows ahead with this plan? Because in this case, this was after the fact, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And actually, this judge tried to issue a ruling very early on, reaching effectively the same result, but he got overturned by the Ninth Circuit. Now, if you are the lawyers in those other jurisdictions and you expect or are thinking there may be a National Guard deployment, you should be using this decision sort of as an intellectual template for you, right? It lays out a set of standards that if you are the lawyers in those jurisdictions, you now want to adopt, and provides a level of analysis at the factual level that sort of gives you a roadmap for determining, okay, if I'm going to challenge the National Guard in my jurisdiction, I need to establish X, Y, and Z. And you'd want to follow the court's ruling pretty carefully just to demonstrate that you're following this authority. So I think you could see the upshot of that is I think you could see swifter responses as a result of this decision in jurisdictions where the National Guard may yet be deployed.
All right, Ankush Khardori, thank you so much.
And joining us now is NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley, and MSNBC legal analyst and former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Catherine Christian. Ryan Noble, start us off. A lot of developments today as it relates to this push for answers in the Epstein case. What's the very latest there on the Hill?
Well, and I think you're right that there was perhaps some hope among high-ranking Republicans that the long August recess would lead to this Epstein controversy fading away. But it's actually been the exact opposite. As we've seen through town halls all across the country, this was something that constituents were pressing Republican members about. And as soon as we get back to Congress being in session, we're seeing them address this issue immediately. Today, a group of survivors of the Epstein controversy will be here on Capitol Hill. They will meet behind closed doors with a bipartisan group of members of the House Oversight Committee. They will also get an audience with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Then tomorrow, many of them will appear in a public press conference with Congressman Ro Khanna and Tom Massey, where they're expected to talk about their experience with Epstein and this sex ring that he had run. The expectation here is that we're going to hear from survivors who have not talked about publicly before. And then the question is, how much more teeth will there be behind this investigation? The House Oversight Committee has already subpoenaed documents from the Department of Justice. They are getting some of those documents in. They've subpoenaed documents from the Epstein estate. They're expected to get some of them as soon as the end of this week. And they've also scheduled depositions and closed-door transcribed interviews with some of the people directly connected with this controversy, including Alex Acosta, who is, of course, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, who was in charge of the initial Epstein investigation. Anna.
So, Ryan Nobles, you've got survivors meeting with lawmakers behind closed doors today. You have a bipartisan press conference expected with another group of Epstein abuse survivors tomorrow. As you point out, sure doesn't sound like the long summer break did much to calm the waters. Is the pressure coming as much from Republicans as it is Democrats right now?
I would think there's equal parts right now, Anna, and certainly most rank and file Republicans would like to see this go away, but it doesn't take more than a handful of Republicans to make this issue an issue, particularly in the House of Representatives. And that's where you see Representative Ro Khanna and Tom Massey trying to find an angle here. They are filing the discharge petition at 2 o'clock today that would force a vote on the House floor, compelling the Department of Justice to release all the information that they have related to the Epstein files. And they also believe that this press conference that's going to happen tomorrow is going to put a ton of pressure on members of Congress to get this information out there. Listen to what Khanna said this weekend.
What will be explosive is the September 3rd press conference that both of us are having with 10 Epstein victims, many who have never spoken out before. They're going to be on the steps of the Capitol. They will be telling their story, and they will be saying clearly to the American public that they want the release of the Epstein files for full closure on this matter.
And so we'll wait for that tomorrow. We'll see what happens out of this closed-door meeting that is happening here today. Anna, what is very clear about this closed-door meeting is that this is going to give these survivors an opportunity to tell their stories in a safe and private space and reveal information that maybe many of these members of Congress have never heard before. Anna.
Okay, Ryan Nobles, thank you. Please keep us posted. Ryan Riley, we know the oversight panel or that committee is also expected to obtain some relevant documents from Epstein's estate. What might those include?
Yeah, I mean, the birthday book that you mentioned sort of up top might be the chief one there. That's what at least what Democrats say they could be looking for. And that, of course, is the document that the Wall Street Journal reported about, including all of these birthday messages for Jeffrey Epstein, including allegedly, although the president denies it was from him, one from Donald Trump that received obviously a lot of attention and sort of renewed a lot of the interest in the Epstein case. Of course, as you see on the screen there's also going to be financial records, non-disclosure agreements, the potential client list, although we've heard from a lot of experts on this that there was no quote unquote clients list. And then that birthday book, which has drawn just a ton of attention because of the direct connection to Donald Trump, allegedly. There obviously were known to have this close social relationship, but the actual birthday well wish is the one that has been some controversy that the president has denied writing.
Right. So, Catherine, this birthday book, we've talked about it before. It's something that's not going away. How significant could it be, especially given President Trump's denials about including anything in it? If it turns out there's something there, Then what?
It's significant because we will know the people who were in Epstein's social world. That does not mean they were criminals. But if you're signing his book, wishing him a happy birthday, you're people who know him well enough that he would have you sign this book for him and wish him a happy birthday.
I'm wondering, too, when we were just hearing from Ryan Nobles about the meetings with the abuse survivors, potentially some survivors coming forward who haven't come forward before. If they give new information, could that launch a new direction and perhaps reopen an investigation? Well, in terms of like the DOJ's stance?
Well, Epstein is dead, so that part of it is gone. But what it might do is chill any talk about pardoning or commuting the sentence of Ms. Maxwell, because it's enough that we have her trial and those witnesses who testified publicly in court. Now we have other people who, when they were minors, which means they can't consent, were victimized by Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Epstein.
But what if they point fingers at other people?
Yes. Well, then you would hope that the U.S. attorney, whatever district that these acts happened against them, would start questioning them seriously, and particularly if they're naming names that the DOJ and the Southern District and the Florida U.S. attorney were not aware of before.
Ryan, House lawmakers are also seeking documents from the Treasury Department related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, right? What's that all about?
Well, the Treasury Department could have records. There's supposed to be these anytime a bank transfers more than $10,000, there's supposed to be these records. So it might help to sort of paint this financial picture of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and where some of his money was going, what sort of interactions he got that way. But I think especially from the documents from his estate could be potentially more illuminating. But the Treasury Department ones might be of interest as well.
Catherine, your thoughts about what they're calling suspicious activity reports that they're trying to get from the Treasury Department?
Well, all banks, all financial institutions are required to file suspicious activity reports. In law enforcement, we call them SARs. Whenever a customer or an account looks suspicious, is engaging in some financial crime, money laundering, they are required to file that with the Department of Justice. We've seen these transactions. In our opinion, it's money laundering. In our opinion, it's some financial fraud, some elder fraud. So if those were filed by whatever banks or financial institutions he kept his money, they would give a wealth of information about what was going on financially with him and Miss Maxwell.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Catherine Christian. Thank you very much, Ryan Riley. I appreciate you both.
A federal judge just confirmed what Democrats have long warned. Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth broke the law by deploying the military in Los Angeles during an immigration crackdown. The Posse Comitatus Act exists to prevent any president from using troops as a personal police force, yet Trump crossed that line, turning soldiers into tools of intimidation instead of defenders of our nation. While his Justice Department may try to protect him, this ruling sets a crucial precedent for states and cities to resist future abuses. Americans don't want tanks on their streets or soldiers at their doorsteps. This decision is a win for the rule of law and a reminder that in our democracy, even a president is not above it.